Elira was born on a world made of ice and silence. The planet was called Virelon, a land of shining white plains and glass-like mountains. The people of Virelon were proud and cold, both inside and out. Long ago, they had removed something from their bodies, something that made them different from most living beings. They had removed the ability to feel pain. Pain, to them, was a weakness. It distracted the mind, clouded the heart, and made one hesitate in battle. So they evolved beyond it. They replaced their nerves with perfect circuits and calm logic. No one on Virelon screamed. No one cried. No one ever knew what it meant to hurt. Elira was one of the best among her kind. She was a scientist, trained to study human biology, fascinated by the creatures who still lived with emotion and pain. She didn't understand how they could survive with such chaos inside them: fear, anger, love, sadness. It all sounded messy. But she also couldn't deny her curiosity. When her research team was sent to observe a human colony on the far edges of known space, Elira volunteered first. She told herself it was for science. But deep down, a small and quiet voice inside her, a voice she did not understand, wanted to see for herself what it meant to feel. The mission went well at first. Her ship orbited above the colony, studying the humans from a distance. But one night everything went wrong. An asteroid shower hit their vessel. The alarms screamed, the ship shook, and the cold void outside came rushing in. Elira's people reacted with calm precision. No panic, no fear. Just numbers and orders. But as the hull cracked open and fire swallowed the decks, logic was not enough. The ship fell from the sky like a broken star. When Elira opened her eyes again, she was lying among twisted metal and smoking wreckage. The air was thick and heavy, burning her lungs. She looked around. The others, her crew, her people, were gone. Only silence and the slow crackle of fire remained. She checked her body. No pain. No injury she could feel. Her systems reported damage, but she couldn't feel it. Just as always. Just emptiness. She tried to stand, but her leg wouldn't respond. She felt pressure, but no pain. Cold logic told her she was injured, but her face remained calm. She started crawling toward the broken hull, her hands shaking slightly, not from pain, but from confusion. Then she saw movement. Through the smoke, a tall human figure stumbled toward her. His clothes were torn, his face bloodied, and his eyes full of something she had never seen before. Fear mixed with determination. He was limping, dragging another survivor behind him. The human man saw her and froze for a moment. His gaze met hers. "You hurt?" he asked, his voice rough but gentle. Elira blinked, confused. The words didn't make sense to her. "Hurt?" She tilted her head slightly. "I do not understand. I am damaged. But it is acceptable." The man gave a weak smile, wiping blood from his forehead. "Acceptable, huh? You talk funny." He crouched down beside her and looked at her leg. "Looks broken. Can you move?" "I can function," she replied, trying to stand again but falling. Without hesitation, he slipped his arms under her and lifted her up. She was surprised. His body was trembling, his breath shallow, but he still carried her. No machine, no protocol, no calm calculation. Just pure will. As he walked toward a half-intact shelter, she felt the heat of his body against her cold skin. It was strange. Her kind didn't touch often. Physical contact was rare, unnecessary. But in that moment, she felt something faint, like a spark beneath the surface. It wasn't pain. It wasn't fear. It was something new, something she couldn't name. When he set her down near the fire, he sat beside her, clutching his arm in pain. She watched him closely. Blood ran down his hand. He winced, but he didn't stop. He smiled at her again. "We're alive. That's what matters." Elira looked at him silently. Alive. She had always thought she knew what that word meant. But looking at this fragile human, bleeding and broken yet still smiling, she realized she might not understand it at all. For the first time in her life, she wondered if the absence of pain truly meant the absence of life. The wind outside screamed through the broken walls of the crashed ship. The sun had already vanished behind dark clouds, and the temperature dropped fast. The human colony world was far colder than Elira had expected. Her kind could adapt to the cold easily. Her body automatically regulated temperature. But humans, they were fragile in ways she had never imagined. Evan Cole, the human who had saved her, sat beside the fire he had built from the wreckage. His face glowed faintly orange in the dim light. The flames flickered in his tired eyes. His body shivered beneath a torn jacket, and every breath he took came out as a white cloud in the freezing air. Elira sat across from him, perfectly still, her silver eyes reflecting the fire. The cold didn't bother her. She could sit in the snow for hours and feel nothing, yet watching him tremble stirred something strange inside her. "You should rest," she said quietly. "Your body temperature is dropping. That is dangerous for humans." Evan chuckled weakly. "Yeah, no kidding." He rubbed his hands together, trying to keep them warm. "I miss heated floors already." She tilted her head. "Why do you not simply alter your physiology to handle the cold?" He smiled faintly. "We can't. That's not how humans work. We just endure it." Elira didn't respond. She found it curious, illogical even, that a species so fragile had survived so long in a universe this harsh. Yet there he was, injured and freezing, still managing to smile. After a while, the fire began to die down. The fuel was running out and the cold started to creep back in. Evan pulled the blanket tighter around himself and lay down. Teeth clattering slightly, Elira remained sitting. The wind pushed through the cracks, making a low, lonely whistle. She could hear Evan shiver again and again. "Hey," he murmured, his voice soft and tired. "Aren't you cold?" "I do not feel cold," she replied simply. "Must be nice," he said, smiling faintly with his eyes closed. "You don't feel anything, huh?" Elira looked at him. His voice was gentle, but there was something sad hidden behind those words. "Feeling is not necessary," she said. Evan chuckled quietly. "You sound like a machine." She frowned slightly. "I am not a machine. I am Varelian." "Right," he said, opening one eye and grinning. "A very serious alien who doesn't feel anything. You and I make quite the pair." She didn't answer. She didn't know how. Hours passed. The fire went out completely, and the temperature fell even lower. Evan began to shake uncontrollably now. His face had gone pale, and his breathing became uneven. "Your systems are failing," Elira said quickly. "You will not survive the night." He forced a weak smile. "Not if I freeze first." Her chest tightened, a strange, uncomfortable pressure. She didn't understand it, but it scared her. She moved closer. "There must be a solution." He looked up at her, half-conscious. "There is. Come here." "Share some heat," she froze. "Share heat?" "Yeah," he whispered. "Your body's warm enough. Just stay close." "It helps," Elira hesitated. "Varelians never touched others unless necessary. Physical contact was seen as unnecessary, intimate." Yet as she looked at his shaking hands and pale lips, that strange pressure in her chest grew stronger. Finally, she crawled closer and lay beside him. Evan's body felt like a dying fire, flickering and weak. Her own skin glowed faintly blue in the dark as she wrapped an arm around him, pulling him close. His warmth seeped into her cold surface. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, deep inside, she felt something stir, something faint, electric, alive. Evan sighed softly, resting his head against her shoulder. "Thanks," he murmured, voice fading. "You're warmer than you look." She looked down at him, her silver hair brushing his face. The contact was strange, almost uncomfortable, but also pleasant. His heartbeats echoed softly against her chest, steady and fragile. She didn't know why, but she didn't want to move away. She just watched him breathe, her own systems adjusting to match his rhythm. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, two broken beings, one who couldn't feel pain and one who felt too much, found warmth in each other's silence. Elira closed her eyes, not to sleep, but to listen. For the first time in her life, the emptiness inside her didn't feel so empty anymore. When the morning came, the storm had passed. The air was still cold, but the sky had turned pale blue. Weak sunlight fell through the cracks of the broken ship, painting soft lines across the floor. Alira opened her eyes slowly. Evan was still asleep beside her, his head resting against her shoulder. For a moment, she didn't move. She just looked at him, his chest rising and falling, the faint sound of his breath. Humans looked so fragile when they slept. She moved her arm gently, trying not to wake him. But as she shifted, she noticed something strange. A deep, dull ache spread across her upper arm. She frowned. Looking down, she saw a dark mark, blue and purple, on her pale skin, a bruise. She blinked in confusion. Her body shouldn't have reacted like this. Her systems were built to repair any damage instantly, without sensation. Yet this hurt. Not much, but enough to make her heart race. She pressed a finger to the bruise. A sharp sting made her gasp. It was so small, but it felt huge. Die Herr mind. For the first time in her life, Alira understood what pain was. She sat still, staring at her arm, her eyes wide in disbelief. How could this happen? Did sharing warmth with him change something? Was it possible that his touch had awakened something in her, something her kind had lost long ago? A low voice broke her thoughts. "Morning," Evan said quietly. His eyes opened slowly, and he gave her a tired smile. "Still alive, huh?" Alira didn't answer at first. She turned her arm toward him. "Explain this," she said. He blinked, confused. "That's a bruise. A bruise," she repeated, the word feeling heavy on her tongue. "Yeah, you probably bumped into something last night. Does it hurt?" She hesitated. "Yes," she whispered. "It hurts," Evan smiled softly. "Then congratulations. You just felt pain." Alira looked at him, her silver eyes uncertain. "Why would anyone celebrate that?" "Because," he said gently, "it means you're alive." She stared at him in silence, trying to understand. Pain was supposed to be weakness, yet when she looked at him, tired, injured, smiling through the ache, she saw strength, not weakness. Later, they went outside the wreck to search for supplies. The world around them was covered in snow and ice, but bits of metal and burnt panels still smoked from the crash. Alira moved carefully among the wreckage. Evan followed behind, limping slightly. "Careful," he warned. "Some of these edges are sharp." Before she could answer, her hand brushed against a broken piece of metal. A deep slice opened across her palm. She gasped, staring at the red blood seeping from the wound. The pain shot through her hand like fire. It was so sudden, so intense that her knees almost gave way. Evan rushed to her. "Let me see." He took her hand gently. She wanted to pull back, but his touch was warm and careful. He tore a strip from his sleeve and began to wrap it around her palm. Alira watched him silently, her eyes filled with shock. "Why do you do this?" she asked. "You are in pain yourself, yet you help me." "Because that's what people do," he said simply. "Pain isn't something to run from. It reminds us that we still care, that something matters." His words settled deep inside her. Something matters. When he tied the cloth around her hand, she noticed her fingers trembling. It wasn't just the wound. It was something else, something in her chest. She looked at him and asked softly, "Does it ever stop?" "The pain?" Evan smiled sadly. "Sometimes. But not always. You learn to live with it. You learn to fight through it. That's what makes us human." Alira lowered her eyes, her voice quiet. "I think I am starting to understand." As they walked back to the shelter, she looked down at her bandaged hand. It throbbed gently with every heartbeat. The ache was still there, but now she didn't hate it. It made her feel strange, heavy, and alive, all at once. For the first time, Alira realized that pain was not just suffering. It was proof that she existed. The days after the storm passed slowly. The cold winds still whispered outside, and the nights were long and silent. Alira and Evan stayed inside the broken ship, surviving on whatever scraps of food they could find. The beacon he had repaired was their only hope of rescue, but it needed time to send a full signal across the stars. Evan spent every waking hour trying to fix it. His hands were cracked and dirty, his movements slower each day. The fever that had started after the storm had not gone away. Alira noticed everything. The tremor in his fingers, the sweat on his skin, the weakness in his voice. But what she couldn't understand was why it bothered her so much. Her chest felt tight every time she saw him cough. Her mind kept calculating survival chances, yet her thoughts always ended the same way. She didn't want to lose him. One night, she sat near the small fire while he worked on the beacon again. His face was pale under the flickering light, his eyes tired but determined. "You should rest," she said softly. "Your body needs recovery." He shook his head. "Can't. If I stop now, we might miss the rescue window." "You are damaging yourself." He laughed weakly. "That's what being human means sometimes. We keep going even when it hurts." She frowned, frustration rising inside her chest like heat. "That is illogical." "Yeah," he said with a grin, "but it's real." He coughed hard then, bending forward. Illyra was beside him in an instant, her hand on his back. His body shook violently, and when he finally stopped, there was blood on his hand. Her vision blurred for a second. Something inside her felt like it was tearing apart. Her voice trembled. "You are dying." He looked at her gently. "Not yet." "Then stop working," she snapped. "Stop before it becomes worse." Evan smiled faintly. "Illyra, you sound worried." She froze. The word echoed in her head like thunder. Worried. It didn't exist in her people's language. It was something only beings with hearts could feel. She started, but her voice broke. "I don't understand this feeling." "It's care," he whispered. "You care about someone, so their pain becomes your own." Illyra felt a lump in her throat. It was strange and painful. Her eyes burned and her breathing quickened. "Why does it hurt so much?" she whispered. Evan smiled, his eyes soft. "Because it means your heart is waking up." She looked at him in silence. His words settled deep inside her, filling her chest with both warmth and pain. She wanted to deny it, but she couldn't. Every time she looked at him, every time he smiled despite his weakness, something inside her ached, and she didn't want it to stop. That night, she couldn't sleep. She watched him from across the small fire as he lay still, his face pale under the faint glow. The sound of his breathing was uneven, and every pause made her heart pound in fear. When the fire began to fade, she stood and walked to him. She knelt down, placing a hand on his forehead. He was burning up. Her voice trembled as she whispered, "Don't leave me." His eyes opened slightly. He smiled again, even now. "I'm not going anywhere." "Not if you keep the fire going." Her heart broke at that smile. She wanted to shake him, to tell him that he wasn't allowed to smile when he was dying. But instead, she wrapped a blanket around him and pulled him close. His warmth mixed with her own cold skin, and she felt that same spark again, the one that had started the night they shared heat. Evan's head rested against her chest. His heartbeat was weak but steady. She closed her eyes and held him tighter, as if her arms could keep his life from slipping away. For the first time in her existence, Illyra felt helpless. Logic couldn't fix him. Science couldn't save him. Only hope remained, and she had never believed in hope before. Yet now, sitting in the darkness, holding a dying human, she prayed to a universe she never believed in, and when she felt a single tear slide down her cheek, she didn't stop it. The storm returned that night. It came without warning, roaring like a beast outside the shattered hull of the ship. The wind slammed against the metal walls, making the entire wreck shake. The fire that had kept them alive flickered weakly, struggling against the cold air creeping in from every crack. Illyra sat beside Evan, her silver eyes full of worry. His fever had gotten worse. His skin burned under her touch, and his breathing came slow and uneven. The human who had once smiled through pain now lay still, his strength fading. "Evan," she whispered, shaking him gently, "you must stay awake." He opened his eyes halfway, the faintest smile appearing on his cracked lips. "Still bossing me around, huh?" Illyra swallowed hard. Her throat felt tight, her heart pounding painfully in her chest. "You must not sleep," she said again, her voice trembling. He coughed, a dry, weak sound. "I'm just tired, Illyra. Just tired." "You cannot give up," she said firmly, though her voice cracked on the last word. He looked at her, his eyes soft and warm, even in weakness. "You know, when we met, you said you didn't feel anything. But look at you now." Elira felt her eyes burn, and before she could stop herself, tears began to fall. "Do not speak," she whispered. "Save your strength," Evan smiled faintly. "I told you. It's okay to hurt. It means you care." The wind howled louder, pushing freezing air into the room. Elira looked toward the door. Snow was blowing in through the gaps. The temperature was dropping fast. She could feel the cold even through her adaptive skin. If it was affecting her, then Evan didn't stand a chance. She looked back at him. His lips had turned pale and his body was shivering uncontrollably now. A deep panic filled her chest. An emotion she didn't even have a word for. Without thinking, she pulled him close, wrapping her arms around him tightly. His body was ice cold, and she could feel his weak heartbeat against her. She pressed her forehead against his and whispered, "You will not die. Do you hear me? I will not let you die." He didn't respond, only breathed faintly against her neck. She moved quickly, gathering every blanket, every piece of cloth she could find, and wrapped them both inside. She pulled him against her chest again, holding him so close that she could feel every shallow breath. Her body systems adjusted automatically, pushing more heat into her core. Her skin began to glow faintly blue from the effort. The warmth spread around them like a cocoon, small but steady. She brushed a hand through his hair and whispered, "Stay with me, Evan. Please." Her voice broke on the last word. She had never begged in her life. But now nothing else mattered. Not science, not logic, not pride, only him. Minutes passed. Then an hour. The storm outside screamed and tore at the metal walls, but inside, Elira didn't move. She just held him tighter, afraid that if she loosened her grip, he would slip away forever. Her mind replayed every moment they had shared. The first time he smiled at her, the first time she felt pain, the first time he told her what it meant to care. Every memory burned brighter than the fire ever could. Finally, he stirred slightly. His fingers moved weakly against her arm. She looked down, hope lighting her eyes. "Evan?" His voice came faint and broken, but it was there. "You're warm." She let out a trembling breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "Yes, I am keeping you alive." He smiled softly. "Feels nice." His eyes closed again, but his breathing grew steadier. Elira rested her head beside his and whispered, "You foolish human. You gave me something no science ever could." The storm raged for hours, but inside that small wreck, two fragile beings fought against the darkness together, one with fire in his heart, the other with warmth newly born in hers. And for the first time, Elira felt pain she didn't want to escape. It was the pain of caring, of love, of fear, and she embraced it fully. Outside, the snow buried the world in white silence. Inside, Elira held him close, refusing to let go. And deep within her, the girl who had never felt pain whispered to herself, "If this is what it means to feel, then I never want to be numb again." When Elira opened her eyes, the storm had finally ended. The silence outside felt almost unreal after so many hours of howling wind. The world beyond the broken walls was covered in white snow, glimmering softly under the pale morning sun. Evan was still in her arms. His breathing was faint but steady now. His skin was warm again, warmer than it had been in days. Relief washed through her like sunlight breaking through the clouds. She gently brushed the hair away from his face. "You survived," she whispered. He stirred slightly, his lips curving into a small smile. "Told you, I don't die that easily." Her chest tightened again, that same strange feeling that always came whenever he smiled. "You should not speak," she said softly, though her voice trembled with emotion. "I'm fine," he murmured. "You kept me alive." Elira looked away, her eyes glistening. "You kept me alive first," she said quietly. "Maybe we saved each other." Before he could answer, a sharp sound cut through the silence, a distant hum. Elira turned her head toward the open sky. There, far above the snowy plains, she saw something flashing, small lights moving slowly through the clouds. "Evan," she said, shaking his shoulder gently. "Do you hear that?" He blinked weakly, trying to focus. "What is it?" Rescue ships, she whispered, her voice trembling with hope. The beacon worked. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then, slowly, a smile spread across his tired face. Guess you'll get to go home after all. Her expression softened. Home, she repeated quietly. The word no longer sounded the same to her. She wasn't sure where home was anymore. Minutes later, the sound grew louder. The air outside shimmered as two human rescue crafts descended near the crash site. Elira stood up, still holding Evan's hand tightly. The bright lights cut through the snow and human figures stepped out wearing heavy gear. Survivors! We've got survivors here! One of them shouted through the wind. They rushed toward her. Elira tried to explain that Evan needed medical help first, but the rescuers were already lifting him onto a stretcher. She followed them closely, never letting go of his hand until they tried to separate her. Miss, please step back, one medic said. We need space to treat him. Elira's voice shook. He needs me. He'll be fine, the medic assured her gently. We've got him now, but Elira couldn't move. Watching them attach machines to his chest, watching his body go still under the oxygen mask, it hurt in a way she couldn't describe. Every second apart from him felt like something tearing inside her. When they finally placed him inside the rescue craft, Elira followed silently, ignoring the stares from the other humans. She sat beside his bed as the ship took off, the world of snow fading below. Hours passed before he woke again. The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Elira sat in the same spot, her eyes fixed on his face. When his eyes opened, relief washed over her like warm rain. You're safe, she said softly. We are both safe now. Evan looked around weakly. You stayed? Of course, she said. I could not leave you, he smiled faintly. You cried, he whispered. Her face flushed, and she looked away. I did not intend to, it just happened. That's what makes it real, he said. You feel now. That's what living is. Elira's eyes shimmered with tears again. She reached out and gently took his hand. His fingers curled around hers, warm and human. Evan, she said quietly, my people believe pain is weakness, but I think they were wrong. He smiled softly, squeezing her hand. Welcome to humanity, Elira. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They just sat together in silence, two souls who had crossed the cold emptiness of the universe to find warmth in each other. Outside the ship, the stars shone brighter than ever. Elira looked at them through the window and whispered, Maybe pain is not something to escape. Maybe it's what makes us real. As the ship flew toward safety, she felt something new inside her, a small, glowing warmth that no storm could ever take away. Weeks passed since the rescue. The human ship was now in orbit around Elira's home planet. The crew was preparing to send her back to her people. But Elira didn't feel the same excitement she once imagined. She stood near the observation window, watching her world below, blue clouds swirling over golden continents. It was beautiful, yet somehow it felt distant, like she was looking at a memory instead of home. Behind her, the door hissed open. Evan stepped in slowly, leaning on a cane. His leg was still healing, but his eyes were bright again. He smiled when he saw her. You're leaving tomorrow, he said softly. Elira turned, her silver eyes soft. Yes, my people sent a transport. They want to study what happened on the planet. And to take me home, Evan nodded. You should be happy. I should be, she whispered. But I am not sure I am. He walked closer, standing beside her at the window. The silence between them was gentle, filled with things neither could quite say. You know, Evan began, before the crash, I thought pain was just something to avoid, something that made life worse. But now I think it's what gives everything meaning. The pain, the fear, even the loss. It's all part of being alive. Elira turned her head to him. I did not understand pain before, she said softly. On my world, we were taught to control it, to ignore it. To feel nothing was considered strength. But when I saw you bleeding, when I thought you would die, she paused, her voice shaking. It hurt more than any wound I could imagine. Evan smiled gently. That's not weakness, Elira. That's love. Her breath caught at the word. Love, She repeated quietly, as if tasting it for the first time. It is such a small word, but it feels so big inside. He chuckled softly. Yeah, it usually does. She looked down, her voice trembling. When I go back, I fear I will forget how it feels to care this way. You won't, Evan said firmly. Once you've felt it, you can't unlearn it. It stays with you, like a light that never goes out. Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time she didn't hide them. You have changed me, Evan. Before you, I was only existing. Now, I feel alive. He reached out, gently touching her hand. And you changed me too. You made me see how strong the heart can be, even when the body is breaking. For a moment, they stood in silence, hands touching. Two different worlds connected by something greater than either could explain. The next morning came too soon. The docking bay buzzed with noise as Alira prepared to board her ship. The human crew came to say goodbye, but her eyes searched only for one face. Evan appeared, walking slowly, a faint limp in his step. He carried something small, a piece of metal from the wrecked shelter they had survived in. He held it out to her. A souvenir, he said with a smile. To remind you of that frozen hell we called home? Alira took it gently, her hands trembling. I will keep it. Always. Then, for the first time in her life, she did something her kind never did. She stepped forward and embraced him. Her arms wrapped around him tightly, her face buried against his shoulder. Thank you, she whispered, for showing me what it means to feel. Evan's voice was quiet, rough with emotion. Thank you, for proving that even across galaxies, hearts can understand each other. When she finally stepped back, tears shimmered in her eyes, but there was a small, peaceful smile on her face. The ship's door closed, and Alira stood by the window as it lifted away. She saw the human ship shrink into the stars. Her chest ached, but it was a beautiful ache, the kind that reminded her she was alive. As her world grew closer, she whispered to herself, Pain is not my enemy anymore. It is my teacher. And somewhere deep inside, she could still feel his warmth, the warmth that had once saved her from the cold,